Hello, everyone, and welcome to A Mindful Moment. I'm Justin Epstein, author of the top-selling book, Super You, and minister of the Unity Center of New York City. Glad you're here today, and I wanted to share with you something that I first read probably as a 12-year-old, one of the first books I ever read on the spiritual journey, probably the first. But anyway, there's a lot of really great ideas that you can see how apply to your own life and are quite spiritual. So we've been talking about relaxed concentration, and we've said that first of all, it takes a little discipline to quiet your mind. And there have been a lot of great business people, athletes who've learned to quiet their mind. A lot of places, a lot of teams and businesses are meditating now to learn how to quiet the mind. That's the first step. Then the next step is developing interest. You don't want to just use discipline to force yourself to concentrate. You want to find something inherently interesting in what you're doing. We talked about that also. And then step 3 in concentration is what's called absorption. This is when you really start to be drawn into what you're doing. And you actually begin to, you're putting aside the all fears and anxiety. There's no room for it because you're so absorbed in what you're doing. And it's pleasurable and it's conducive to excellence. Doesn't that sound good? That's how psychologists describe the flow experience. In an interview of Jane Blaylock, a professional golfer, I believe she's in the Hall of Fame now, she says, she describes this experience of absorption. She says, and I think I put this in my book, Super You. I don't think, I did. She says, it doesn't happen all the time, but when I'm playing well, sometimes it's as if my eyes change. I can feel it. I just feel like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. A transformation happens. I'm a totally different human being. I don't hear anybody. I don't see anybody. Nothing bothers me. Nothing is going to interfere with what I'm about to do. Isn't that cool? On this coming Sunday, I'm talking about the masks we wear. And when just reading this again, I could see that she was tuning in to her true self. She was so absorbed in what she was doing. That sometimes happens to me when I'm speaking. I will feel a shift in my vision, and people will all of a sudden feel much closer. They'll be much closer. I can see greater details, and I feel a deeper sense of calmness and peace. And I believe that's from being absorbed in what's happening rather than self-one with the ego with its fears and worries and all that stuff. No, you're absorbed and there's no room for any of that. So then in the earlier edition that I read as a 12-year-old, the 79 edition, he actually mentions a fourth stage of concentration. He didn't include that in the revised edition. He didn't use that word oneness. Oneness. It was in the old edition, or it wasn't in the 1998 edition. He sort of included it into absorption. Didn't mention oneness, but I think if you're spiritual, you like the term oneness. Listen to this. He says, so from absorption, you can go into an even deeper state involved in whatever activity you're in, called oneness. He called it the fourth level of concentration I've experienced only a few times in my life. It could be called oneness. It's almost impossible to describe the experience because it's like falling asleep. You don't really know how you did it until after you've waked up. Only in looking back do you realize that you are in a different state of consciousness. You ever been so absorbed in something, you're like, where was I? You know? I've experienced that in meditation, where you're still, you're watching your breath, or you're engaging in a technique, and all of a sudden you go somewhere. You're like, where was I? And you feel more enlivened and more joyful. He says oneness can happen in any activity, but only when you give yourself totally to what you're doing. And that's cool. I recently heard Timothy speak. I attended a conference with him and many other speakers who were interested in these ideas. And he said he practices this with everything he does, from putting on his trousers in the morning He's giving concentration, and so it can happen with any activity. He says it may sound mystical, but at the time the experience seems quite natural. You totally lose yourself only when you totally give yourself. When you really focus on something, you're really giving yourself, aren't you? He says, I believe that this is one of the primary reasons that athletes make the great effort they do. I like that. Of course, there are also ego reasons, but there's a matchless feeling of exhilaration when we have made a total effort and somehow in the process lost all traces of self-one, which is equivalent of the ego. To accomplish this, even for only a few moments, is enough to prove that it is possible to survive perfectly well without self-one around to help you. And it gives us a goal to shoot for. I'm reminded of the master psychologist, Jesus the Christ, who said, lose yourself to find yourself. Isn't that neat? So here we have the spiritual translated into the physical. Giving your concentration to what you're doing, finding something interesting in it, becoming absorbed in it, and then having moments of total oneness. Isn't that great? It doesn't just have to happen in sex, people. This can happen in, I know some of you were thinking that. This can happen in any activity. Isn't that neat? Why athletes make the effort they do, because they've experienced those moments of being in the zone, being in the flow, oneness. And I believe, why not? I think that's our destiny. It's not to die and go to some place up in the sky, though the astral world is something some sages tell us will happen, but it's to cultivate the joy, the presence, the ecstasy, the awareness in the present, and bring it. I'm really shaking. Some of you feel like you're in an earthquake. I got to quit shaking the table here. So you can feel a sense of oneness in whatever you're doing. Something to think about, right? Yeah, the minister said the word sex. Yeah, he did. Oh, well. That's good. That's a good thing. Cultivating absorption and having moments of oneness. He says that's the goal. I agree with him. Seek first the kingdom. Let's experience more moments of oneness, shall we? All right. Thanks for joining me today, and I hope to see you again for another mindful moment. And if you get a chance on Sunday, join me for a message on the masks we wear. See you next time. Thank you for joining me for a mindful moment. Remember to subscribe to my channel for more mindful moments as they go live. Click above for a list of previous mindful moments to enjoy on your own time anytime.